You awaken in silence, not in a place, but in the memory of a place where stars burn with the slowness of ancient grief, and warships sleep beneath curtains of dust. You are adrift in the void, but you do not fall. The stars do not blink. They watch, they wait. Somewhere, deep beneath the ghost tides of forgotten campaigns, a vessel breathes slowly, methodically, like something dreaming of war. Its name is Chimera, and it remembers everything. You feel it before you see it. The weight of thought without words, precision without warmth. It is not malice that stirs, but calculation. A blue-skinned specter moves behind the veil of memory. His crimson gaze, not burning but analyzing, dissecting, understanding you before you understand yourself. He is Grand Admiral Thrawn, and you have always known his name. You drift closer. The Chimera is not dead. It waits like a lion beneath the sand, half buried, half listening to the rhythm of galactic silence. Once, it cut through hyperspace like a needle of death. Now, it sleeps. But you know sleep is never weakness. It is preparation. You float past its jagged wings and sense the memories painted on its Holman calamari blood. Bothan resistance, shattered fleets, cloaking whispers dot inside. There is stillness, the crew long gone, the circuits only dimly glowing. Yet in the command chair, the shadow remains, not a body, but a pattern, not a ghost, but a plan, waiting for time to catch up. You are not ready, the voice says not aloud, not even through air, but across the marrow of your bones. You know who speaks. Thrawn does not shout. His legacy is not noised, is silence arranged like strategy. He speaks through the placement of fighters, through the harmony of defeat and capture, through the gallery of a destroyed rebellion. You are not here to speak. You are here to remember. The walls of the Chimera are not walls, they are canvases. The art hangs not in frames, but in calculation. A Twi'lek sculpture, broken and reassembled wrong. A Wookiee battle banner, shredded and rethreaded in the style of ancient Pantoran weavers. These are not trophies, they are insights. Every enemy tells him who they are through what they cherish, what they paint, what they mourn. You are one of them now. You sense it. You are being read. You press deeper, the corridors elongating, soft with the hum of machinery, waiting for command. The galaxy has forgotten this ship. The new republic turns its gaze elsewhere, but this silence is not surrender. It is the silence of the deep ocean before the Kraken rises. You reach the observation deck. The stars spill in like old ink, and you feel as though you are standing on the edge of time itself. In the center of the room, a figure stands with arms behind his back. Not a man, not even a memory, a presence. You believe the galaxy has changed. Thrawn's voice reaches you, woven of chill and elegance. You are mistaken. It rearranges. It does not evolve. You blink, but cannot speak. He continues. There is always art, and through art pattern, through pattern weakness, through weakness victory. You want to ask him why he waits. Why now? Why return? But you realize he never left. Every strategist, every rebel planner, every Senate whisper that speaks his name feeds him. They keep him alive. Myth does not fade when believed in, it sharpens. Thrawn steps aside, revealing a map not in light, but in glass. Planets etched in crystal, trade routes braided in wire. His hand hovers over it, but does not touch. Like a musician choosing the first note in a song of conquest, Mount Tantus, he murmurs, almost to himself. A secret buried in plain sight. An emperor's gift wrapped in madness. You feel the name like static on your skin. Mount Tantus. The place where cloning is no longer science, but sorcery. The place where shadows, where faces, and memories are duplicated into obedience. You know this place in dreams. You know Joruus Sebiath waits there, his mind a shattered mirror, each shard reflecting hunger. Thrawn knows it too, but he does not fear madness. He employs it. He turns to you fully now, and you are pierced by his gaze, not judgment, not anger, just analysis. Like he's determining if you will become a flaw in his Aquasanor, its missing piece. You will witness the return, he says. Whether you survive it, that is irrelevant. You want to turn back, but there is no back. Not in dreams like this. Not in histories written in blue ink and red eyes. You descend into the core of the ship. There, slumbering behind locked partitions and sealed decks, are the seeds of empire. Not just weapons, not just fleets. Ideology, stored in silence, waiting to be spoken again like scripture. You find a room lit by a single beam of white light. A circle of stormtrooper armor surrounds it, but not ordinary stormtroopers. Their armor is too symmetrical, too white, too still, clones, perfected, perhaps even force-touched. You remember the rumor. Thrawn had dabbled in strange reinforcements, not because he needed strength, but because he needed precision. You lean close to one helmet, and the eyes look back. They are not asleep, they are simply paused. Thrawn does not build armies, he curates them, and then a melody, a low hum, familiar and wrong. It's the Emperor's theme rearranged, slower, minor, key, playing from nowhere. You are being led. A door opens, not because you touch it, but because you are expected. Inside, a single canvas, painted in ochres and deep navy, a storm over a city. You recognize it, Lothal? No, something older, something from your dreams. Thrawn's voice returns. Every civilization must end in rain. It is the purest cleansing. From the erosion of stability, truth grows. We do not resist entropy, we design it. The stars outside pulse, once softly as if they remember. You do not remember falling asleep. You do not remember waking. But you are here, on the Chimera, where everything that once shattered now coalesces, where silence is sharper than lightsabers. Where the Empire never died, simply dreamed in blue dot, and now it dreams of you. You walk deeper now, not through corridors of steel, but through memory cloaked in lightless gravity. The Chimera does not hold you, it absorbs you. Your thoughts are no longer entirely your own. Something breathes beneath the framework, something that was always here. It does not hunger, it does not feel, but it remembers, and through that remembrance, it rebuilds. You begin to see him not as a man, but as a system, a rhythm, born of fracture, reason, born of annihilation. Grand Admiral Thrawn is no mere tactician. He is the slow-burning ember of empire incarnate, and you are drifting through the verses of his unfinished aria. You feel the gravity of Mount Tantus growing nearer, even though you haven't moved. Its name echoes through the ship like the final word in a prophecy long denied. Once hidden by Palpatine's paranoia, it now pulses like a second heart beneath the Chimera's rusting spine. You recall Whisper's clone cylinders, stacked like tombs, genetic songs remixed into perfection. And a madman named Jorowis, who believes himself both prophet and god. He waits, still tethered to Thrawn's design. Not because the Admiral trusts him, but because he understands that madness is the only key that opens certain doors. As you descend into the psychic abyss of this memoriscape, the stars blink out one by one. You are falling again, this time into the hollowed-out past where rebellion victory once planted hope like a fragile seed. But the soil was never clean. The Empire did not vanish. It simply recoiled. You remember Ender, not through celebration, but through the silence that followed. A million voices cheering, and none noticing what remained hidden in the outer reaches. Thrawn did not mourn the Emperor. He assessed the loss, measured the vectors of chaos, and began his reassembly in the shadow of ignorance. You see him now not in uniform, but in stillness. He stands before you within Mount Tantus, though your feet never touched the surface. You are standing inside the idea of it. The walls here are not durasteel. They are thought-made structure, obsession made manifest. Rows of clones breathe in rhythm, eyes closed, dreams indistinguishable from commands. They are not born, they are calculated. They do not live, they are deployed. Some bear Jedi faces familiar and wrong. Others wear expressions sculpted by Thrawn himself, serene, austere, terrifying in their restraint. You watch one blink. He sees you, but does not move. He is not awake because you are here. He is awake because something is about to begin. You step forward. The floor feels soft, almost liquid, as if you are walking across the surface of memory itself. Each step reveals Ecoslia's voice on a distant comm link, Luke's saber igniting in darkness, Han's laughter swallowed by alarms. The new Republic, so sure in its fragile structure, never considered the art of resurrection. But Thrawn did. To him, loss is not defeat. It is material, something to arrange, to repurpose, to refine. Sebieth appears in a flicker, not a man, but a glitch in the soul of this place. His voice is salt and static, calling you to bow, to kneel, to accept the coming order, not through strength, but through surrender. I am the heir, he hisses, the voice of the Force renewed. But even here, in the bowels of power, you feel the lie. Thrawn tolerates him because chaos obeys rules if you learn its cadence. The chimera itself blinks awake for the first time in years, and you feel its pulse sinking with your breath. This is no longer a dream, it is alignment. You are becoming part of something, not a cog, not a prisoner, a witness. You are led into a gallery, not of portraits, but of failures, each one framed in precise sorrow. The loss of the Katana fleet, the defection of Nagri warriors, the silence of Rock's final betrayal. These are not buried. Thrawn studies them because he believes all flaws are invitations to understand deeper. You walk past a sculpture forged from shattered X-Wing wings. You see datapads frozen in carbonite, their screens mid-scream, each one a lesson, each one an opening, and at the center, an unfinished piece, blank, waiting. It is shaped like you. You do not know what that means, only that you are not outside this anymore. You are the final note of an aria Thrawn has been composing since before the Death Star fell. And then you feel it, not a tremor, a call. It comes from the stars themselves, like glass humming under pressure. The unknown regions, that place from which Thrawn came, and to which only he holds the map. There, the empire was never truly gone. There, something darker sleeps. You sense it through him, through the way his eyes narrow, not in fear, but in anticipation. They have forgotten, he whispers across time. But forgetting is the first failure. You see ships blacker than vacuum, engines humming in language. You see Kaiser's ruins holding secrets even Palpatine feared to unravel. And you realize the Chimera is not returning to an old war. It is beginning a new one designed before you were born, one too patient to fail. Thrawn does not raise banners, he raises silence. And in that silence, the galaxy listens. You awaken again, unsure whether you ever slept. The Chimera is gone, now not because it left, but because you are no longer required to see it. But something remains, something beneath your skin. A knowledge that war does not begin with blasters, but with breath, with preparation, with the rearrangement of pieces so subtle, the game ends before the opponent realizes it began. You are part of this now. Whether by fate, by design, or by the unseen geometry of Thrawn's will, you carry the echo. The dream does not end, it only expands. You remain still now, not from fear, but from reverence. The echoes of Mount Tantus have receded into soft afterglow, and yet something within you continues to hum quietly, deliberately. You are no longer walking through halls or visions. You are walking through legacy. It coats your breath, weighs your limbs. The Chimera has faded into myth once more, but the memory it placed in you does not wash away. You carry Thrawn's calculus within your marrow now, not as command, but as awareness. You feel the shape of the galaxy bend around his intentions, even as new Republic systems glitter in ignorance, celebrating a peace that was never fully born. Their senators squabble over trade lanes and taxes, oblivious to the hand-placing stones. In the Dark One, move at a time, one shadow at a time. You are part of the shadow now, not to destroy, but to know. You dream again, this time of a throne carved from melted starship wreckage, seated not by a tyrant, but by a mind. The stars curve differently here. They orbit will, not gravity. You are watching Thrawn's future unfold, not as possibility, but as preparation. There is no fleet amassing in the typical sense-only silence, growing sharper. Cold equations wrapping round forgotten war routes. Alliances forged through forgotten debts and unspoken admiration. You see Mara Jade walking corridors lit by uncertainty, her loyalties unraveling in the pulse between past servitude and present survival. You see her eyes narrow when she hears his name, not in hatred, but in calculation. She knows, as you now do, that Thrawn does not seek chaosy, orchestrates inevitability in the distance. You hear the low resonance of hyperspace being folded, not pierced, but cradled, as though the Chimera never tore through space, but seduced it. You feel the breath of thousands clones, warriors, tacticians suspended in cryogenic weight, each one selected like notes in a symphony not yet performed. They are not an army, they are a verdict, a thesis on order. Each life, a counter-argument to rebellion's improvisation. You do not fear them, you understand them now. They are not evil, they are design, and in their stillness, they mirror you. You are not here to choose sides. You are here to remember what others forget. You return once more to the gallery of failed empires, the blank sculpture in your shape is gone. In its place stands a mirror not of glass, but of polished obsidian. You gaze in, and you do not see yourself. You see Thrawn, not smiling, but watching. His eyes gleam, not with pride, but with patience. You realize, then this has never been about domination. Not truly. Thrawn's war is not against planets or peoples, it is against decay, against chaos, against the myth that the galaxy can sustain itself through emotion and sentiment alone. He believes in structure, in sequence, in a galaxy that does not spiral, but aligns. You breathe this in like air after thunder, cold, real, inevitable. In its place a star map, one you've never seen before, not of known systems, but of paths unrecorded. It pulses like veins beneath skin, and you understand these are not routes to planets. They are routes to influence, to memory, to systems that believe themselves safe. You see the name Wayland. You see the line that leads not just to it, but through it. A corridor of lost minds and half-born clones. Joruus remains there, lit by madness, his hands raised in command, though none truly obey. He is the chaos Thrawn weaves into order. You see him scream, and still you do not look away. There is a final room. You have not been invited, and yet the door opens. It does not hiss, it breathes. Within, a single datapad glows atop a pedestal of fractured durasteel. The text scrolls slowly, symbols from dozens of languages, but your eyes follow. They understand. This is the contingency, the last move. Not if Thrawn fails, but if he wins. Too easily. For he has written plans for rebellion within the Empire itself. Not because he doubts, but because he prepares. You see names Pelion fell, Parkle aligned in long-forgotten timelines, their purposes layered, their loyalties shaped like spirals. You feel the air shift, as if a page has turned without your touch. You were never meant to find this, and yet here you are. You exit the room. The ship hums slower now, as though its breath deepens, like a predator no longer hungry but ready. You do not know if you are still on the Chimera or inside the idea of it. The lines have blurred. Perhaps they were never lines, only illusions. You stand at the viewport again. The stars no longer blink. They burn constant, like sentinels watching history reawaken. You feel the weight of Thrawn's return, not as thunder, but as tide, relentless, rhythmic, ancient. The new republic may carry banners and rhetoric, but Thrawn carries design. As you prepare to live or awaken, you feel his presence one final time, not beside you, not behind you, but through you. Victory is not conquest, he whispers. It is the alignment of inevitability with intention. You nod, not to him, but to the idea, to the truth, to the silence that sharpens until it sings. You are no longer merely a witness. You are the echo, the observer within the pattern within the observer. And as the stars return to their places, and the hum of the Chimera fades into myth once more, you remember that some empires do not fall. They wait in the quiet, in the dark. In you, you are standing on a shoreline that does not exist on any map, where waves do not crash, but whisper slowly, rhythmically, like the breath of something vast and remembering. The sea before you is black, not from night, but from knowing. It holds no reflection, and yet you feel as though it sees you, behind you, there is only fog, thick with the scent of old fuel and burning metal, as if wars long ended are still smoldering somewhere close. But the ocean calls you forward, not with sound, but with memory. Somewhere across these timeless waters he returns, not from exile, from calculation. Grand Admiral Thrawn has never been absent. He has only been aligning. Tides. You begin to walk, though there is no sand beneath your feet, only starlight hardened into path. The sea hums softly now, and each note tells of systems that thought themselves distant enough to forget. But the sea remembers. It carries the weight of fallen destroyers, the ghost maps of the unknown regions, the encrypted cries of lost fleets. And you begin to understand. Thrawn's path is not linear. It is tidal. He withdraws to reveal. He recedes to return. The Kaises knew this. They knew him not as commander, but as inevitability wrapped in intellect. They did not mourn his absence. They studied its silence. Far above, the constellations have changed. You no longer recognize the shape of the sky. Stars burn in unfamiliar clusters, blinking in sequences that feel rehearsed. You hear the names spoken without voice: Sener, Nirawan, Zilla. Each name hangs in the air like the final note of an unfinished symphony. And then one name echoes louder: Eli Vanto. You do not know why this name feels like gravity, but it does. It is not shouted, it is remembered. Somewhere in the void, a former aide walks corridors of command, once foreign, now familiar. He learned not from textbooks, but from the silence between Thrawn's footsteps. He speaks fewer words now, but each one carries precision. You feel the tides shift beneath your feet. The black water glows faintly, and you see shapes moving below. The surface memories, perhaps, or blueprints of what's to come. Ships without name, forged in secrecy. Engines fueled not by kyber or hypermatter, but by vision. There is no rebellion here, only rearrangement. You realize this ocean is not literal. It is the subconscious of strategy. Thrawn's return is not through battle, but through ripple. He touches no surface directly, and yet all of them bend. You kneel and place your hand upon the water. It does not ripple. It stills perfectly, as if accepting you, as if waiting. Leah's hands press to her temple, feeling tremors in the force, like old wounds, reopening. Luke's eyes turned outward, not to threat, but to prophecy. They know something is coming. They feel it, but they cannot name it. And that is Thrawn's power. He does not move like war. He moves like erosion, steady, undeniable. Galactic infrastructure will rot, not through sabotage, but neglect redirected. You see systems ignored long enough to starve. You see trade routes shifted subtly enough to cause economic collapse 2 years later. You see sympathy for the Empire blooming in places no one thinks to check. And then you see him, not in the flesh, but in formation. His eyes are closed, arms behind his back, uniform precise, even in abstraction. You approach. The closer you draw, the more you sense the weight of intellect that surrounds him. He does not project power. He pulls it into gravity. Around him, loyalty orbits naturally. Even dissent becomes tool. He opens his eyes not sudden, but slowly, as if timing even this gesture with purpose. The rebellion seeks clarity, he says, his voice echoing in every molecule of mist. But clarity is a luxury. War is interpretation. You do not speak. You do not need to. He already knows your questions, because he arranged their arrival. He continues, walking slowly across the mirrored surface of the sea. You see return. As movement, I do not. I return by changing what you expect. I return by reminding the galaxy that silence is strategy. You follow, though no feet move, you simply remain near. Around you, the ocean begins to form shapes, memories of battles not yet fought, the fall of Corellia's gates, the silence of Fonder, the defection of a senator whose loyalty was never questioned. These are not predictions. These are pre-written histories awaiting proper actors. Thrawn does not hope. He designs. He does not chase victory. He arranges it to arrive on time. You begin to see faces, not soldiers, not politicians, artists, poets, historians, each one studied, each one catalogued, because in their brushstrokes and metaphors, Thrawn finds the mathematics of belief. You see a sculpture, crumbling Thrawn smile, not for joy, but because collapse revealed design. The essence of power, he whispers, is understanding what others dismiss. And then the ocean stops whispering. It begins to rise. You see the stars spinning faster now, a celestial storm building, not of weather, but of forgotten names. You feel the burn of histories unwritten, smothered before they could breathe. Thrawn walks through this storm not as survivor, but as symphony conductor. He gestures. One sand, 1,000 possibilities align into certainty. You awaken once more at the shore. The black ocean has receded. Your feet rest on cold metal now. The deck of a vessel unmarked, except for the faint outline of a familiar sigil, a chimera. It breathes again, not as myth, but as promise. You are no longer a bystander. You are the wave returning, not as passenger, but as presence folded into the curvature of its hull, breathing its rhythm, echoing its pulse. The sigil beneath your feet glows faintly, as if warmed by memory rather than light. You sense it now more clearly than before. This is not the chimera you first touched. It is something newer, something built in exile, somewhere far beyond. The core systems, shaped not by fleet engineers, but by principles born in darkness and sharpened in silence. Every bolt, every curve of its hull, every whisper of ion beneath your boots has purpose, placement, and power. It is not just a warship, it is Thrawn's thought given shape. You move without knowing direction, drawn toward the central core of this quiet giant, the walls humming with a language older than command. Not galactic basic, not Kaises, something in between, a dialect of discipline. Each vibration a subtle command, every corridor a corridor of expectation. The ship does not speak to you, it waits for you to understand. You pass rows of officers, not clones, not droids, not humans bound by fear. They are quiet, purposeful, Kaises and others blended together, not by loyalty, but by alignment. Thrawn does not demand faith. He constructs logic until loyalty is the only possible outcome. They do not salute. They do not speak. They glance barely and return to their tasks. You are not a stranger. You are a node in the pattern. You pass into the command bridge, where the view is not space, but strategy. You recognize none of the names. You understand all of their meanings. They are pivot points, each one calculated to cause disproportionate imbalance when touched. This is not about overwhelming force. it never was. Thrawn does not shatter doors. He reconfigures the keyholes. A shadow passes behind you, and though you do not turn, you know who it is. His presence is not weight, it is clarity. You feel the room align subtly as he enters, not in fear, but in symmetry. Grand Admiral Thrawn stands beside you, his hands behind his back, his gaze forward, never needing to confirm what already fits. You begin to see, he says softly, his voice a thread across gravity, not with the eyes, with placement. He gestures to the outer rim of the holomap. Observe their drift. Each system believes it acts independently, yet each motion increases dependency on the next. Rebellion becomes routine. Independence becomes vulnerability. You cannot defeat what has become self-sabotage. You nod without speaking, not out of reverence, but recognition. Thrawn walks, his boots silent, his path exact. He pauses beside a fragment of sculpture, hovering midra broken Runyon mask. When they lost their homeworld, he says, they commissioned 1,000 such masks, each meant to represent grief through fracture. Observe this one. He gestures gently, and the shard rotates. This crack curves here unexpectedly, not the artist's error, the artist's hope that one day this crack might be rejoined. He turns to you then, eyes meeting yours, not as question, but invitation. The galaxy is full of such artists, those who create despair and then mourn. I am simply the one who remembers the blueprint. The ship shudders gently, not from attack, but from re-entry. You do not ask where. Thrawn already knows your curiosity and shapes its fulfillment accordingly. The stars bend, the holomap shifts, and before you now is a planet without name. Its surface cracked like ancient porcelain, its orbit devoid of traffic. You descend not in assault, but in silence. The landing platform is half swallowed by time. You walk together, your steps echoing in perfect intervals, as if the ground waits for this pattern to return. Below the surface bunkers, archives, laboratories, a vault of forgotten influence. This is one of many, scattered across unknown coordinates, each one storing not weapons, but leverage. Data decays, Thrawn says, but influence fossilizes. He leads you into a room where light is preserved like gold leaf, suspended in slow-motion shimmer. Within are datapads, artifacts, intercepted communiques, old speeches, family records, votes cast, and faces forgotten by the Republic. These are not intelligence. These are vulnerabilities, seeds, levers, promises made and broken. Entire planetary alliances can be reconfigured with the weight of a single sentence, extracted from history, reapplied in new context. Control, Thrawn murmurs, is not achieved through threat. It is achieved through the fear of memory. You follow him deeper into the vault, until the walls begin to pulse like living architecture. You are shown no weapons, only truths. The Empire failed, not because it was cruel, but because it was inefficient. Fear alone cannot sustain, but inevitability that can. You pass an old holocron Jedi script etched along its rim. I do not seek their power, he explains, only their structure. The Jedi did not fall, they collapsed, because they assumed stability was natural. It must be maintained, designed, practiced. You begin to see Thrawn's return, not as movement through time, but as unfolding, like a bloom slowed to the point of invisibility. every moment calibrated, every silence meaningful. The new republic, bloated by hope, forgets that peace without vigilance is theater. And theater, eventually, collapses beneath the weight of its own audience. Thrawn does not need to conquer. He only needs to continue. You rise again, leaving the vault, not because you are done, but because the next piece requires new light back. On the ship, the stars have changed once more. A signal pulses faintly deep in the unknown regions. Not distress, not summons. It is a beacon of alignment. A distant fleet, silent, loyal, forgotten. You know it now. The true core of Thrawn's resurrection is not here. It lies far beyond, where chaos reigns and maps weep. He walks toward it, not to lead, but to fuse. The Grisk still linger. The Kai's ascendancy still breathes. He does not smile. He does not rush. He simply prepares. Victory is not an end, he says quietly. It is a rhythm, sustained. Through pause and pattern, you feel the stars shift in response, and the map grows quiet, and so do you. You remain in the stillness now, suspended between thought and motion, between a ship that no longer hums and a galaxy that has not yet realized it is already falling into rhythm. The Chimera, or what it has become, rests above the nameless vault planet like a judge overlooking a court no one dares enter. Below, the remnants of forgotten influence whisper like dust on stone, and above, the stars hold their breath. Thrawn is no longer beside you, but his presence remains a quiet current in your bloodstream, a blueprint pressed into the folds of your memory. You do not need his voice to hear him. He has already shaped your silence. The stars beyond the viewport drift slowly, their patterns alien, almost melodic, and you sense it again, the slow convergence of everything. Not chaos, not war. Alignment, the idea that nothing happens unless it must. Unless it is allowed to echo, you begin to descend. Through the halls once more, not guided, not summonedly drawn. Each chamber you pass through feels like a frozen stanza in a long-forgotten poem, every surface etched with the grammar of precision. You arrive again at the central gallery, the core of this vessel's memory. This time it has changed. The obsidian mirror is gone. In its place, a sculpture made of holographic drift-shifting, layered, translucent. It depicts a battle never fought, the fall of a star system erased from public records. You recognize it now. It's not a future, it's a rehearsal, a what-if, curated into permanence. You reach toward it, but it evaporates into light, and you understand you are not meant to shape these events. You are meant to witness how they already shaped you. The ship begins to move again, not with haste, but with intent. You feel the direction, even without destination. It turns toward the unknown regions, not to flee, but to connect. There, in the hidden fractures of galactic charts, lie the final variables. Not just the remnants of old alliances or mysterious threats, but the question of continuity itself. What survives when memory fails? What structures endure when empires fall? You remember Thrawn's words. Victory is not an end. And now you see what he meant. It is not about a throne, not about symbols. It is about rhythm. A pattern so complete it no longer requires a conductor to sustain its music. The vessel pulses around you like a second skin, its corridors narrowing as you are led toward a chamber you have not seen before. This room is dark not with shadow, but with anticipation. In the center, a single beam of pale light illuminates a floating orb of star charts and Kais's geometry, wrapped in lines that drift like smoke. You do not touch it, you only listen. It sings softly a harmony made from coded languages and pulsing trajectories. Within it, you see a fleta, secret, fleetant, touched by time, loyal not to ideology, but to Thrawn's vision. They do not bear the Empire's sigils. They wear no markings. They are the idea of order, distilled, awaiting a signal, not of war but of balance disrupted. You step back, the light fades. Behind you, a door opens into space, not airless, but dreamlike. You walk onto the observation wing again, this time with no barrier between you and the stars. They wrap around you like old stories remembered at last. You sense, rather than see, the pathways of power stretching across the galaxy. You feel the tremor of Mon Cala growing restless, the flicker of fear in Coruscant's upper levels, the tightening breath of the New Republic's leadership as systems fall quiet, not from rebellion, but from withdrawal. The storm does not begin with thunder, it begins with absence. And Thrawn has mastered how to vanish in ways that echo louder than presence. Your eyes trace the map of stars as it overlays itself with new data. There are names on the periphery, now new names, unfamiliar, but their meanings settle into you, like ancient truths. Syndic Mithras, Saphis, the Grisk War Navigator, the Pact of Nelrasa Drift, each name a thread, each thread drawn tight in silence. You understand now, the war is not coming. It has always been. The galaxy is simply arriving late to the realization. You turn inward, and the voice returns not in sound, but in certainty. Your role, Thrawn says, from within the architecture of thought, was never to choose sides. It was to remember the structure, to preserve the map when others burn it. You descend once more, but not toward war, toward meaning. The vessel carries you not to battlefields, but to decision points. Locations where a whisper rearranges policy, where a glance changes allegiance. You were brought before the stasis vault-sealed containers, holding not weapons, but agreements, alliances signed in shadow, each one representing systems waiting to pivot, not rebels, not Imperials, neutrals, slowly leaning toward the return of something less chaotic. They do not ask for war, they ask for design, and Thrawn, across every action, offers them that, not peace, not tyranny, but the rhythm of consequence. The ship slows again, its final movement, less a stop, and more a breath held above a gas giant. With no name, its rings faintly shimmering with crystal debris, the stars fall quiet. Thrawn stands there now, not beside you, but in full sharply defined by absence. His eyes meet yours, and you feel the final truth. He does not need to win. He only needs to remain necessary. And in a galaxy ruled by imbalance, nothing is more necessary than order. You have walked the tides, he says. You have seen what return truly is. It is not declaration, it is drift, until the galaxy orients around you again. And as the ship turns once more, not toward conquest, but toward calibration, you feel the tides within you shift. You were never the audience. You were the instrument. The tide does not need permission to return. It only needs silence. You awaken, where light refuses to land, where even stars hesitate before daring to cross. The map before you is not one etched on parchment or projected in holograms. It is inscribed in the soot of forgotten fire, in the ash of names burned quietly beneath celebration. You are floating above a star field that trembles, not from motion, but from memory, not spoken, not celebrated, but whispered like a scar beneath the breath of history. You feel it as a weight in your chest, not from reverence, but from recognition. This name, this myth has been used, altered, twisted, revered. But here, in this darkened corridor between galactic veins, it is only a residue, a question that was never fully answered. Who was he, really, and what did he leave behind? You drift slowly through the ruins of a satellite archive, long abandoned by the New Republic, swallowed by time and bureaucratic indifference. But it hums when you enter. Not because it knows you, because it remembers him, Luke, the boy who looked too far into the horizon, the man who carried hope like a torch into shadow, and the legend who vanished into silence. The databanks pulse like dying stars, and you begin to piece it together. Not a biography, but a pattern. Every time the galaxy tried to move on, the name Skywalker returned, like a storm pattern that cannot be predicted, but always arrives. You see echoes of him in battles beyond his lifetime. You see resistance cells invoking his tactics. You see enemies building their strategies by measuring how not to become like him. But all of it is distorted, fragmented. Luke is no longer a man. He is myth calcified into map. And then beneath the surface, you find something stranger accords, encrypted not by the New Republic, but by Imperial remnants. A voice speaking of Skywalker not as a threat, but as a concept. If the Jedi represented balance, it says, then Skywalker was imbalance, seeking redemption. You feel a coldness wrap around that phrase, not cruel, but clinical. You know who wrote it, Thrawn. His voice dances between the lines like thread through broken glass. Skywalker is not to be defeated. The log continues. He is to be interpreted. His actions suggest not logic, but symbolism. That is where the weakness lies. You sit with those words, feeling their truth, their danger. Skywalker inspired millions, yes, but he also fractured countless realities. For each life he saved, a new fanatic rose. For each tyrant he felled, a new uncertainty was born. He is not just the light. He is the imbalance that follows light. Leave the archive with a question pulsing behind your ribs. Did Luke know? Did he understand that his journey lit not just the path, but the fire? You descend now into the memory of Mount Tantus, again, not physically, but through the gravitational memory it left behind. There, buried beneath fractured cloning tubes and unstable DNA sequences, you sense a project, one hidden even from the Emperor's inner circle. It wasn't just about cloning Jedi, it was about replicating belief. You see footage corrupted, but visibly love attempts to recreate Skywalker, not just his form, but his decisions, his doubts, his mercy, his rage. Each clone shattered differently, not because they failed, but because they came too close to truth. Luke was not an ideal. Q was a contradiction given purpose, and that cannot be programmed. It can only be remembered. You drift into the void between two black stars, now, and in their intersection you feel a voice. Leia. Her voice rings clear in a way the others do not. She does not seek myth, she seeks protection. He didn't ask for this, she says softly. across a recorded transmission. He never wanted to be legend. He only wanted to save one person, and we made him save the galaxy. You feel your throat tighten, not from sorrow, but from understanding. The galaxy projects what it needs onto the willing, and when they fail, it punishes them for being human. Luke never disappeared. He simply unraveled. The stars pulse now with fragments of his journey to Goba's swamp still clinging to the scent of old wisdom. Cloud City echoing with the sound of falling trust. The sands of Tatooine still warm with longing. Each place he touched became stained with meaning. Each meaning grew beyond him. You realize now that Thrawn was never obsessed with destroying Luke. He studied him. He mapped his weaknesses, not to kill him, but to ensure no other Skywalker would ever matter again. This is what makes Thrawn terrifying, not his fleet, not his precision, but his understanding of myth as virus. Control the myth, and you control the next 1,000 decisions made in its shadow. You are pulled now toward Wayland. There, beneath rusted gates and whispering wind, you see the final failed clone, Luke, a shadow with eyes but no soul. He fought like the original, moved like him, even wielded the same saber, but he did not feel. He reacted, and that was the flaw. Thrawn didn't need Luke to win. He needed him to fail, to demonstrate that Skywalker was not repeatable, that from this point forward, the galaxy must move beyond him. Not because he was wrong, but because he was unstable. A myth that had served its purpose, and perhaps a myth that had grown dangerous. You leave the surface again, ascending into the map's edge, where stars fall silent, and only throngs, constellations remain. You see now the next steps. New leaders are being shaped, not in temples, but in conversations, in policy, in tactics. Leia remains but quieter now. Han wanders, his stories slowly softening into bedtime tales. And Luke, wherever he is fading not into death, but into diffusion. The idea of him now lives in fragments, in saber hilts passed down, in the way a child looks up at the stars, in the rebels who never met him but say his name before battle. This is what Thrawn saw. This is what he planned for. You feel the ash fall now, slowly, not like ruin, but like surrender. The galaxy no longer needs a Skywalker to ignite it. It needs stability, precision, rhythm. Thrawn does not erase Luke. He lets time do it, and he guides that time with the patience of tides. You stand now at the edge of a galaxy built from burnt myths and arranged debris, and you see it clearly. The ash of Skywalker will not vanish, but it will no longer lead. It will only echo. You drift now through the echo chamber left behind by the Skywalker name, a vacuum not of space but of meaning. It presses against you like the soft pull of gravity around a dying star, where the light no longer radiates outward but folds back into itself. Luke's presence is no longer a flame. It is embers scattered through the halls of distant temples, etched in the eyes of students who no longer remember his voice but carry his burdens anyway. You feel the galaxy adjusting, like bone realigning after trauma, not with healing, but with acceptance. The map around you redraws itself slowly, not erasing Skywalker, but enclosing him. He becomes a point of origin, not a direction. The war he fought was won, perhaps, but the vision he carried did not survive it. Now others pick up the thread. They do not follow it. They cut it into pieces to weave into their own ideologies. You see Leah standing before a gathering of systems, her eyes shadowed by the weight of both legacy and betrayal. They listen, but they do not hear. They nod, but they do not follow. She speaks not of Luke, but of consequence. Her voice is steady, but the silence after each sentence grows longer. They are already drifting. They speak of trade, of regulation, of defense budgets. They want policy, not prophecy. You watch her hands curl inward as she leaves, and you understand she has buried her brother a second time. Not beneath stone, but beneath irrelevance. You are drawn again to a planet without name, a place where a broken hilt lies in the sand, half buried by years of wind and neglect. You recognize it. The saber once wielded by hope, once passed through hands that trembled. With decision, it hums faintly, as though awaiting the palm of someone who no longer exists. But no one comes. There is no ceremony, no force, only silence. This saber will not be ignited again. It will become part of the soil. And that, perhaps, is the final lesson. Not all weapons must be wielded again. Some must become foundation above. This world, you find a drifting remnantan escape pod sealed with old imperial markings. Inside, there are journals, untouched, not of war, of observation. And within them, Thrawn's thoughts, not commands, not critiques, musings. He writes of Skywalker, not as a threat, but as a waveform. His greatest flaw, Thrawn writes, is his dependence on singular action. The Jedi tradition of intervention, while poetic, is inherently destabilizing. The galaxy does not need saviors, it needs calibration. You feel your breath catch, not because you disagree, but because you see the consequence of truth wrapped in cold clarity. Thrawn saw in Skywalker not an opponent, but a weather pattern brilliant, unpredictable, unrepeatable. You read further. I do not seek to erase Skywalker, he writes, only to render him non-essentially time. And there, beneath those words, is the strategy that shapes the tides. Remove the need for the myth, and the myth decays. Allow the galaxy to forget not through suppression, but through redundancy. In a galaxy where no one waits for a Jedi, there is no room for one to return. You begin to feel it now, the shift in teachings. New Force users, hesitant, scattered, taught in fragments. They speak of balance, but not of Skywalker. They do not trace their lineage to him. They trace it to need. And that is Thrawn's hand, again gloved, not in war, but in influence. He does not extinguish flames. He lets them run out of oxygen. You drift to the outer sectors, where smugglers and pirates rule. And there you find something strange. Not fear, reverence. They speak his name not as warning, but as myth. Skywalker, they say, the ghost with the glowing sword. They do not know his history, only the silhouette. He is no longer man, nor hero. He is story. And story, when untethered from fact, becomes tool for anyone who can wield it. A lie shaped like truth, a truth reshaped into nostalgia. You realize then, Skywalker's true legacy is not what he did, but what was done in his name. The stars shift again, and now you hover above a system where the Jedi once trained New Hope. You see it destroyed, not by Thrawn, not by war, by time, overgrowth, disuse. It was not attacked, it was forgotten. You walk through the halls, empty, sacred only to the dust that has made its home in the corners. Holocrons blink dimly, repeating the same phrases. Do or do not. A Jedi uses the Force for knowledge, but no one listens. You kneel beside one, placing your hand on its surface, and it deactivates. It has told its story to many times. It seeks rest. You feel Thrawn again, not near, but far. Watching, he is not celebrating. He does not revel in destruction. He marks it, measures it, uses it, but he is the cartographer of its shape. The New Republic grows nervous. Their security councils whisper of shadows, of instability, of systems gone quiet. But they do not mention Skywalker. They have trained themselves not to, because speaking of him is to admit that something larger once existed, something irreplaceable, and that would be to acknowledge the gap. You return now to the map, no longer dark but dull. The ashes have settled. Skywalker no longer echoes as thunder, only as wind. Barely heard, easily mistaken. You stand over that quiet and realize this is not defeat, this is design. To let a legacy become legend, to let a legend become anecdote, to let a name become just another star in the sky, visible but no longer navigational. And so you sit, watching the galaxy pivot, not around light or dark, but around indifference. You do not mourn, you observe, because that is what Thrawn would do. And somewhere in the silence between constellations, so does he. You drift now through the remnants of remembrance, no longer searching for Luke Skywalker, but for the shape he left behind. The stars are quieter here, settled into a rhythm beyond myth and mourning. The galaxy has turned the page, but you still feel the lingering trace and echo within systems that once pulsed at his name. Now moving forward with no need to look back, you understand now that legends do not die, they dissolve. Not in fire, but in routine. Not in war, but in scheduling. The New Republic's offices glow with sterile light, senators walking past one another with datapads full of budgets, not memories. The rebellion has become governance. Governance has become fatigue. And in that fatigue, the legend of Skywalker has no room left to bloom. You walk the corridors of Chandrilla's capital station. Children laugh, learning lessons that omit the Force entirely. Their textbooks describe the destruction of the Death Star in neutral tone. The Jedi referenced only as a transitional phase in galactic history. You pause, flipping through one of these digital scrolls. Luke's name appears once. No photograph, no lineage, a footnote. You are not angered. You are not sad. You are aware. Because Thrawn's strategy has not been to destroy Skywalker's legend with violence, it has been to smother it with bureaucracy. You can feel him watching, not from this planet, but from the pattern. And you begin to understand the true brilliance of his return. He does not need to conquer the galaxy. He needs to teach it to forget what conquest looks like. You rise again, not in vessel, but in perception, drawn to the outer rim where the wind still sings in the voices of exiled monks and scavenger children. There, on a cliff overlooking the skeletal remains of an old Jedi shuttle, sits a man with white in his beard and silence in his eyes. He wears no robe, no saber rests at his side. But you know who he is. You've always known. Luke is not hiding. He is withdrawing. The Force wraps around him, not like armor, but like wind through reeds. You feel his awareness touch you, faint, distant, but warm. He has stopped seeking to guide. He only listens. He has seen what belief does when stretched too thin. He understands that to return again would only deepen the fracture. So he lets the galaxy pass him by, lets the myths crumble into sand, lets the sky forget his name, and still his presence changes everything. You sit beside him in memory. He does not speak, but the silence between you deepens. You feel the weight of decisions unmade, battles not fought, temples not rebuilt, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. His greatest act of power may be this: restraint, letting the galaxy define itself without his hand. But the force still hums, still waits, because even now, even buried beneath neglect and misremembering, Skywalker is still the pivot. He has simply stepped back from the fulcrum, and Thrawn knows this, which is why his plan is not eradication. It is dilution. You see the next generation rising, but not in the way the Jedi once envisioned. They wear no titles. They hold no councils. Some are sensitive to the Force, others simply to truth. They move in shadows, repair instead of battle, speak in questions instead of creeds. They are not defenders, they are restorers. And still, in their footsteps, there is a trace of Luke, not in word, in intention. It is faint, almost untraceable, but it remains. You hear Thrawn's voice echo across systems from his unreachable vantage. Power decays in reverence, he says, but influence survives in design. You now see how he threads his return, not through spectacle, but through systems, quiet edits to economic protocols, offers of stability without ideology. The New Republic, bloated and trembling, cannot match his precision. And even as rumors of his resurrection spread, they find no purchase in the minds of the weary. Skywalker's myth fades, and in the vacuum, Thrawn builds not an empire, but a scaffold, cold, measured, permanent. You drift one last time across the arc of old battles: Yavin, Endor, Jakku, each now quiet, each now curated by tour guides and history docs. The memory of rebellion has been institutionalized, sanitized, and yet, in the corner of every exhibit, in the hesitation of every curator's tone, Skywalker lingers, not as a warrior, not as a savior, as a disruption. His myth cannot be killed, only overwritten. And that is what Thrawn seeks to complete, not by slander, but by architecture. He has built a world in which Skywalker is no longer necessary, in which Skywalker is no longer possible. You return once more to that nameless cliff, the man still watching the stars. He breathes deeply, and somewhere, far from here, a ripple moves through the Force. Not in defiance, in reminder. You understand now. Luke's final gift is not his presence, but his absence. By stepping back, he allows the galaxy to see itself, and in that act, he becomes the one thing Thrawn cannot predict: inspiration that survives without intervention. You stand, you walk away. The stars remain. The galaxy spins, Thrawn builds, and Luke listens, and somewhere in between so do you. You awaken beneath stone, not in darkness, but in memory so dense it weighs more than shadow. The walls around you breathe slowly, as if the mountain itself has a pulse. You are deep within. Mount Tantus, though no one brought you here, you were drawn, not by force, by recognition. The mountain does not welcome, it accepts. Its walls are layered with history, not the kind written in archives, but the kind whispered through failed experiments and broken minds. You step carefully, though the silence here has already memorized your footfall. The floor hums under your soles beneath it, the hum of genetic chambers, of tanks filled with dreams turned flesh, of names forgotten by design, that the air smells of something both ancient and synthetic. You pass rows of lights, blinking slowly like the dying heartbeat of an abandoned god. These corridors were not built to house life. They were built to rewrite it. You reach the first chamber, and there he is, Joruus Sabaoth, not in body, but in imprint. His voice echoes through the circuitry. They feared my mind, not my madness, he says, laughter curling at the edge of every word. But it is madness that opens the deepest doors. You do not respond. You cannot. The mountain responds for you, its walls flickering with projections, recordings, failures, confessions. You see him, once, speaking to a clone of Skywalker with tenderness, then fury. You see him touch a tank filled with something vaguely humanoid, humming a lullaby. You see him screaming as data floods into his brain faster than meaning can form. This is no master. This is an echo built from ambition and isolation. But even now, long after death, his will clings to these walls. Thrawn left him here, not out of loyalty, but utility. Madness, after all, can reveal patterns. Logic cannot. You move deeper. Each door opens without prompt. Each step forward tightens. The air, you begin to hear, it's the heartbeat of the mountain itself, not mechanical, organic. A pulsing rhythm buried beneath layers of stone and protocol. You descend toward it, and the air grows warmer, denser, until it feels like you are breathing through someone else's dream. You find a chamber, spherical and vast. In the center, a structure of glass and gold. Suspended within it, a figure, unfinished, unformed, a clone not yet awakened. Around it float fragments, memories, encoded as light. Leia, Luke, Vader, each flickering like broken thoughts circling a mind that has not yet decided what to believe. You step closer and feel the hum change pitch. The structure recognizes you not personally, but symbolically. You are not a person here. You are a variable, something to be considered in its calculations. You are shown flashes, a rebellion wiped clean, a new republic ruled by programmed empathy, Jedi reborn without questions, clones of senators voting as one. These are not plans, they are possibilities, projects aborted, not for ethics, but for instability. Not every clone breaks, but none hold. The Force does not settle into artificial vessels with ease. It stretches them, pulls them apart from within, not from morality, from imbalance. The chamber dims. You are alone again, but you are no longer certain of your own singularity. Something watches from behind your thoughts, not hostile, just curious. You remember now, this place was not simply a cloning facility. It was a mirror, an attempt to perfect not flesh, but narrative. The Emperor's dream was never just immortality. It was control over meaning itself. A Luke that never doubted, a Leia that never forgave, a Palpatine that never died. But memory cannot be mass-produced. Every clone becomes a forked road, fractured to lead anywhere useful. You exit the chamber slowly, feeling each step echo through time. The deeper you go, the older the technology becomes. Stone merges with metal. Vine creeps through wire. The mountain has begun to reclaim itself. It is no longer sanctuary. It is sarcophagus. You reach a lower vault here. The records shift. These are not Thrawn's archives. These are from the earliest years of the Empire. You see the failed first attempts at cloning Jedi bodies that lived for hours, then screamed themselves into silence. You see experiments on memory transference children, raised inside virtual realities, designed to mimic famous heroes. None of them endured. The problem was not biology. It was belief. You enter a chamber marked only with a circle, no name, no number. Inside, a single tank, empty. But you know it once held something. The walls flicker with residue lights responding. Two emotional echoes. You hear crying, not infant, not adult, something between. You are shown glimpses of one who nearly worked, whose mind aligned with the Force in a way the scientists could not replicate. A clone of Skywalker, perhaps, or something else entirely. No record remains, only silence. You sense this one escaped, or was taken. And whoever they are now, they carry a ghost of this place in their blood. The ceiling above you rumbles. The mountain shifts. Not from collapse, but from memory awakening. The systems long dormant begin to align, not fully, not dangerously, but enough to transmit. You hear coordinates whispered in your ear, though no one speaks. A fallback. Location, a sister site. You understand. Mount Tantus is not alone. It never was. It was the heart, but not the whole. And Thrawn, ever the strategist, may have seeded new growth in places no one would dare search. You ascend now, not toward exit, but toward understanding. You pass by rows of old storage containers, some still glowing faintly. You place your hand on one and feel the hum of latent power force sensitivity compressed into chemical potential. These are not weapons, they are seeds. If someone knew how to unlock them, if someone had the patience and vision, they could grow an order, not of Jedi or Sith, but of designed harmony. A dream too dangerous for the Emperor, but perhaps not for Thrawn. You leave the mountain now. The sky above is gray, thick with clouds that have not moved in decades. The wind is still. The forest surrounding the installation watches, unblinking. You do not feel escape. You feel closure. Mount Tantus did not end. It waited, not for conquest, not for resurrection, for context, for someone to understand it, not as laboratory, but as scripture. And now, as you look back upon its sealed doors, you realize you have been initiated. You dream again that night, not of battles, but of copies. You see yourself among them, not duplicated. In each echo, a different belief, and somewhere among them, something begins to speak, not to rule, not to teach, to become you. Awaken knowing you were not alone in that mountain, and you never will be again. You return to Mount Tantus, not in body, but in memory that will not dim. The image of flickering tanks and whispered blueprints remains pressed behind your eyes, like the ghost of a secret you were never meant to keep. As you walk through the corridors, again this time in vision, alone you feel the tremor of unseen threads pulling tighter. You are not haunted, you are entangled. The mountain breathes behind you now, not with power, but with awareness. It remembers that you saw, and in its silent depths, it has begun to stir. You are pulled across distance by sensation, not direction. Through the galaxy's secret, veins toward Another site buried in the folds of old hyperspace routes. It is darker here, not because of light, but because of knowledge buried too deep to echo. The ship that carries you hums with blind obedience. No pilot, no interface, only trajectory written in coordinates, not found on any chart. You land on a dead moon wrapped in rings of rusted satellites. It welcomes you like a mausoleum welcomes its last mourner. Below the surface, you find corridors again, familiar, mirror echoes of Tantus, but colder, more exact. The air here is still and sacred, but not holy, sanctified by structure, not spirit. You step into a hall lined with pods, empty, cracked, abandoned, but not failures. These were used. These were activated. Each one still carries the residual heat of occupation. You pass data clusters, humming with encrypted memory. When you touch one, it shivers into vision. You see them, clones born not for combat, but for calibration. They wore no armor. They carried no weapons. They were listeners, observers, inserted into systems across the galaxy to gauge loyalty, to measure political drift, to record deviation from imperial psychological norms. You feel your pulse steady, not with fear, but comprehension. These were not assassins, they were instruments, and their music was silence. Further in, you find a throne, but not one for ruling. It is a chair for observation, surrounded by looping scenarios. In one, the Jedi Order is rebuilt by a clone of Yoda, quieter, more moderate, more controllable. In another, the New Republic dissolves through slow constitutional erosion, guided subtly by cloned administrators with borrowed charisma. Each simulation ends in alignment, not peace, alignment. A galaxy that does not question, because the rhythm of its decision-makers has been refined into harmony. You realize then that cloning here was not about replication, it was about correction. Thrawn did not seek to clone the Empire's leaders. He sought to clone their intentions. Decided, the air thickens as you move toward a central archive, a single chamber pulsing like a heart. Inside are the remnants of a failed experiment, a clone that broke not from imbalance, but from awareness. It learned too much, saw itself too clearly, realized it was neither original nor free. The logs record its final words. I remember what was never mine. You pause. The lights dim. The chamber offers no more. You understand. Some truths, even created, cannot be contained. Even synthetic consciousness seeks purpose. You step back into a hallway lined with memory capsules, thoughts extracted from dying Jedi, their final moments sealed and preserved, like ancient insects in amber. You hear them now, voices fractured by pain, prophecy, and love. There is no death, only the Force, one whispers. But what if the Force forgets me? Another asks. These are not clean memories. They are ragged, burned at the edges. The Empire tried to shape them. But memories, like seeds, grow in ways no one can predict. You walk past them slowly, respectfully. They are not archives. They are tombstones. You reach the final room, and the door opens only when you stop wanting it to. Inside, a single chamber, bathed in soft red light, where time moves differently. You feel it. This is where the convergence begins, not of timelines, but of intentions. A projection of Thrawn appears not alive, not pre-recorded, rendered, interpreted by the facility based on available data. He stands with his hands behind his back, eyes closed. He speaks not to you, but to the air. The greatest flaw of the Jedi was their certainty, he says. The greatest flaw of the Sith, their ambition. Both are predictable. Both can be measured, but clones carry potential unpolluted by legacy. He opens his eyes now and looks at you, and so I study them. Not to control, to understand what emerges when structure is introduced to chaos without memory. You do not respond. There is no response. This is not conversation. It is witnessing. The projection fades, and from the walls, a slow pulse begins data transferring, something being sent. You do not know to whom. You do not need to. You feel the pattern align again. Thrawn was never trying to rebuild the Empire as it was. He is building what the Empire failed to become, not through fear, through architecture. The clones are not soldiers. They are beams, pillars, variables, arranged with mathematical empathy and strategic coldness. He does not demand obedience. He removes the need for disobedience. You leave the facility slowly, the surface above whispering as dust covers your footprints. The stars above are unchanged, indifferent, but you are not. You feel as though you have seen the future not in vision, but in scaffolding. It is not written, it is planned, and if no one intervenes, it will unfold as surely as shadow follows. Flame. Back, aboard your vessel, you begin to dream not of people, but of structures, of populations swayed not by war, but by arrangement, of heroes forgotten not by propaganda, but by policy. You see Leia's voice fade from public memory. You see Luke's teachings reduced to footnotes. You see the Force categorized and cataloged, explained away as mythological impulse control. And you see Thrawn, always at the periphery, never center stage, watching, measuring, aligning. You awaken as the ship turns toward another unknown system. You do not know what awaits, but you know what lies behind. And it is no longer just a mountain. It is a method. You drift through the quiet corridors of your thoughts, no longer tethered to the gravity of Mount Tantus, but still surrounded by its reach. It lives now in your blood, not as poison, not as power, but as blueprint. What you saw cannot be undone, and what you carry cannot be removed. You move now through the hush between stars, aboard a vessel that no longer registers coordinates in common systems. There are no planets nearby, no transmissions, only an ocean of dark between the embers of galactic memory. And in that space, Thrawn waits, with equations too quiet to detect, with influence buried deep inside the marrow of reconstructed minds. You no longer feel surprise. You feel structure. You arrive on a world unmarked by navicomputers, one that appears only if the galaxy forgets to look. A world surrounded by mist and silence, its atmosphere thick with electrostatic echoes from long-dead Cum's towers. There are no cities, no outposts, only a single structure, tall, metallic, humming beneath the skin of the earth like a tuning fork struck by history. You enter. The interior is cold, deliberate. This is not a laboratory. It is a cathedral, not built for faith, built for intention. The walls shimmer faintly with data streams moving vertically, recording not actions, but ideas. Thrawn has not come here to build war. He has come to refine continuity. You move through a long corridor lined with empty shells, no longer clones, not yet identities. Each one stands, eyes closed, blank, not dead, not alive, held in permanent suspension, as if waiting for the right narrative to enter their bones. You step closer to one. It twitches, not from awareness, from adjustment. The system recalibrates its posture. Even in stillness, they are responsive. These beings are not weapons. They are continuity rendered flesh. If a senator dies, another takes their place with the same voice, the same convictions. If a planetary governor deviates from the plan, their successor will arrive, already shaped. Not a replacement, a continuation. The system does not require loyalty. It requires predictability. Further in, you find the archive chamber, not filled with holobooks, not filled with data pads. It holds memories, or rather, the echoes of experiences filtered through 1,000 minds. Each echo mapped, categorized, replicated. Here, identity is not born. It is manufactured from consensus. You listen to the dreams of clones who have never lived visions, shaped by programmed emotion, by curated trauma. One dreams of Alderaan, though he was never there. Another weeps at the name Ben, though he has no family. These fragments are stitched together with careful precision, each experience filed under usable emotion. What is memory, you wonder, when it is assigned? What becomes of sorrow when it is scheduled? The chamber darkens as you leave it, and your path curves downward, spiraling into the core vault. You walk past walls lit with ancient emblems, the sigil of the Jedi, faded, the crest of the Empire, scarred, the symbol of the New Republic, peeling, each one stripped of meaning, preserved only as data points. You arrive at a single room. Inside, a seated figure waits, not alive, not human, a convergence construct built from 1,000 minds, shaped to appear as none. It speaks before you enter. Continuity does not require consent. It says, only function. You do not answer. Its voice is not conversation. It is confirmation. You step inside. It does not rise. It observes. You witnessed the mountain. You carry the equation. You now understand. Victory is not survival. It is succession. You feel the air shift around you. The floor begins to pulse. You are being scanned, but not for identity, for intention. The structure wants to know what you will become. You see flashes, your face altered, your past rewritten, your motivations refined, until you fit into the algorithm. Thrawn began beneath the stone of Tantus. You resist nothing. There is no reason to. You are not being converted. You are being considered. The construct speaks again. The next step is not creation. It is distribution. Stability through proliferation. You know then that this site is one of many, perhaps the last, perhaps only the next. You leave without touching anything. The ship awaits, engines already primed. You are lifted back into the void, but you no longer feel distance. Everywhere is connected now, not by hyperspace lanes, not by trade, by blueprint. The blueprint of intention, seated in every system touched by this silent program. The clones are not the threat. They are the scaffolding. Around them, governments will stabilize. Populations will find less reason to question. Dissent will soften because the variables have been removed, not through force, through foresight. No longer your own. You dream in fragmented blueprints, in political stability metrics, in human behavior matrices rendered in soft gray lines. You do not resist, because somewhere within you understand that this is not destruction. It is evolution, not of species, of control. The empire failed because it demanded. The new republic fails because it pleads. But this system, it arranges. You awaken near no world. The ship hovers in the dead space between cartography and myth. You step to the viewport, and in the distance, you see it, Mount Tantus, not as a location, but as a symbol now imprinted on the galactic psyche. What began in stone ends in structure. The mountain did not hold secrets. It held instructions. You whisper nothing. You simply watch, and the stars align accordingly. You awaken to a whisper knot in your ear, not in your mind, but behind your name. It coils through the silence like smoke through stone, soft and slow, as if returning from a place the galaxy no longer admits exists. You are aboard no ship. You are within something older than vessels. A vault of echo, where sound has weight and memory drips from the walls like condensation. You walk forward because you must. There is no door, no command, only the pull of a voice that died but did not stop speaking. The Emperor is dead. You know this, and yet he is not silent. He speaks in corners, in systems built to forget him, in frequencies too old for modern equipment to translate. And now he speaks to you. The room grows narrower with each step, as if your presence is being tailored by the corridor. On the walls, etchings not made by hand, but by resonance. You run your fingers across them and feel vibrations, names, orders, screams, none spoken aloud, all encoded. This place is not a shrine. It is a server, a containment field, built not to remember Palpatine, but to house his unfinished sentences. You reach a chamber lit from below, the light pulsing with a sickly amber hue. At its center, a console glows, untouched in decades. You don't reach for it. It reaches for you. The lights ripple outward, forming a hologram not of a man, but of a silhouette cloaked in authority. Every voice must echo. It begins, its cadence drawn from old imperial addresses, or it dies. The words are not mechanical. They are layered with emotion, anger, laughter, cruelty carefully coded. You realize you are listening to something more than a recording. It is an AI construct, birthed from Palpatine's own mind, created not to simulate, but to continue. It knows it is not him, and yet it acts with his cadence, his suspicion, his will. You feel it scanning you, not for allegiance, for usefulness. The room reshapes itself as the voice continues. The galaxy has memory, but it is soft. It forgets not because it forgives, but because it fears. The walls reveal projections moments from the Emperor's reign, not the public ones, but the quiet directives, orders erased from history. Agents deployed under false identities, Jedi spared, not for mercy, but for later use. You begin to understand. The Emperor never intended his death to be an ending. He planned for continuation, not resurrection. This fault is not about life. It is about presence. You are shown Project Syndanant further, not just planetary destruction, but psychological reshaping. Aftermath designed not to kill, but to instill. Systems that experienced his wrath would rebuild themselves in his image, not because they loved him, but because they feared returning to the fire. You see blueprints for monuments never built, each one designed to be discovered in the years. After his death, temples constructed in silence. artifacts placed with precision, memories seated like wrought, and at the center of this architecture throne, the AI turns its gaze toward you, and you feel its attention as weight. He understood me, it says, not in devotion, in rhythm. The Force was a tool, the Jedi a flaw, the Sith a stepping stone. You feel a cold clarity settle in your chest. This voice, this fragment knows it will never rule, but it knows it can still shape, through suggestion, through pattern, through those who listen, even without realizing. You walk now through another corridor, where light and dark flicker like the breadth of argument. The walls shift again, revealing intercepted communications from deep within the unknown regions. Thrawn's voice returns not angry, not eager, analytical. He speaks of legacy as a wave, not a monument. A throne is not a seat, he says. It is a still point in motion, a place where others choose to orient themselves. Palpatine did not fail, he ended, so others could begin. You find a room filled with voices, layered, overlapping, endless. They are not recordings. They are echoes from across the Force, trapped by the technology of this vault. Some you recognize, monsters and martyrs, commanders and traitors. Others are unfamiliar. Each one was touched by the Emperor. Each one left behind a psychic scar. You listen as they speak over one another, and yet every voice bends toward a single tone. Obedience through inevitability. A final door opens, leading to a chamber bathed in complete shadow. No walls, no light, only breath, yours and then his. Not recorded, not digital, real. And you realize that some part of him still exists, not as spirit, not as resurrection, but as presence, tethered to the vault through rituals lost to all but the deepest archives. He speaks once, and it is enough. You see me now, but you always have. His voice is not loud. It is internal. You do not respond. There is no permission to speak, he continues. The Force is not balance. It is will. And mine has not ended, only multiplied. You see stars flicker in the darkness above, each one mapped to a name, each one connected by thin threads of loyalty, fear, ideology. It is a constellation of memory, and it pulses in response to your awareness. I do not command now. I resonate. He pauses. You will carry this, and you do. The chamber fades. The light returns. The vault is quiet. The AI returns with finality. There will be no empire, it says, only arrangement. Memory wears new faces. You step into the corridor once more, the symbols on the walls now glowing softly. Not warnings, coordinates. This vault is one of several. Others lie in wait, not with armies, but with influence. They do not seek dominion. They seek harmony, born of silence. A galaxy tuned to one voice, no longer needed to speak. As you leave, the stars outside seem colder, not because of distance, because of design. Palpatine is gone, but his shape remains. In fear, in structure, in pattern. You walk now not as yourself, but as one who has heard the last voice and cannot unhear it. You do not speak of what you learned. You simply walk into the shadows, and they make room for you. You move through silence now, not as an outsider, but as one inducted by whisper. The vault's shadows remain behind you, but their echo follows. It hums beneath your skin like a second pulse, slow and permanent. The stars ahead feel rearranged, not different in shape, but in purpose. You no longer see constellations. You see alignments, paths drawn not by chance, but by design. Palpatine is gone, yes, but the architecture of his will remains embedded in systems no longer called empire, in doctrines no longer spoken as Sith. He never intended to return in body. He intended to become unreachably inevitable, and you feel it now in every breath the galaxy exhales, the sound of something buried speaking without voice. You arrive in the mid-rim, in a space station half devoured by corrosion, its beacon long expired, its structure held together more by memory than metal. The station opens for you without protest. It knows your presence, not by name, but by frequency. You are no longer simply a traveler. You are a key. Within, the air is stale with age, but threaded with a scent too sharp to forgetism. Old data and something you cannot name. You descend through levels that no longer track life, passing empty corridors, locked doors, consoles asleep for decades. Then, at the core, you find it, a resonance chamber built to capture psychic frequencies, where Palpatine's final echoes were dissected, not for preservation, but for implementation. The console reawakens at your touch, and the walls begin to shimmer with residual Ekas's words, disassembled into tones, woven into strings of raw force emotion, not a speech, a structure. You watch as technicians once worked feverishly, decrypting his pain, isolating the shape of his fear, extracting meaning from anger. You realize now he allowed himself to be destroyed, not because he was arrogant, but because he knew death would make him viral. The Jedi believed in rebirth. He believed in infection, through memory, through replication, through alignment of belief. The logs scroll before you, not blueprints for war machines, not attack orders, algorithms, psychological gradients, designed to manipulate population sentiment on planetary scales, emotive induction patterns, capable of guiding behavior without coercion. These were Palpatine's final tools, beyond lightsabers, beyond fleets. He had begun to see the galaxy not as a body to command, but as a mind to influence. Let them believe, one file reads, and belief becomes obedience. You stare into that sentence and feel the gravity of its truth. There is no need for banners when memory shapes behavior better than threat. You exit the chamber and enter a long hallway, its ceiling high and lost in shadow. Along the walls, a gallery of political art propaganda pieces from every era. Some glorify Palpatine, others dang him, but here they hang side by side, curated like sacred contradictions. A quote beneath the display reads, "The lie is only as strong as the truth it resembles." You walk among them and understand that the Emperor did not care how he was remembered, only that he was. The myth feeds the mechanism. Whether adored or despised, he remains central. And in that centrality, his shape persists. You find a secondary vault, its walls pulsing with light like veins beneath skin. Inside, memory imprints, harvested from fallen Force users, not whole identities, impressions. You touch one and feel confusion, anguish, a voice pleading for clarity, repeating the same phrase. He said, "I would never die, only change." You do not know who they were. You do not need to. They were not kept for power. They were kept for study. The Emperor's voice needed to evolve. These were his tuning forks, his failed drafts, each one a note he discarded, until the resonance was perfect. A final corridor opens beneath your feet, stairs unfolding from nowhere. You descend slowly, each step met with silence. At the base, a chamber with no walls, only fog and echo. You step inside and hear it again, that voice, not as speech, but as vibration. It enters your bones, matches your heartbeat. You stand in the center, and the fog parts just enough to show a throne made of metal and bone. Upon it, not a man, not a body, but a constructa presence. You do not see it, you feel it. Palpatine's consciousness, fractured and spread across networks like stardust woven into wire. What you remember of me, it says, is not who I was. It is who I became after you began forgetting. The words press against your skull, not painfully, but thoroughly. You cannot unhear them. It continues. Power is not permanence. It is presence without permission. You nod without knowing why. You are no longer being spoken to. You are being shaped. The construct shows you visions, not of battles, but of agreements signed in fear, of young leaders compromising for security, of Jedi doubting their worth, of systems welcoming order without question. None of these acts were forced. All were volunteered. That was the Emperor's final weapon, suggestion without origin. You awaken outside the station, without memory of leaving. The stars pulse slightly around you, like the galaxy has taken one long breath and held it. Your ship moves before you command it. The navigation system hums with new patterns. You realize you are no longer navigating, you are being guided. Not because you were tricked, because you accepted. You now carry the shape of something that cannot be named. Not Palpatine, not Sith, just intention. Old, resilient, ready. You do not return to the known galaxy. You drift beyond its edge, to places where belief still grows wild, where small systems trade stories like fire. And there, you begin to speak not in your own voice, but in resonance. You tell stories of the old Emperor. Some are terrifying, some are kind. All are heard, because you are no longer a person. You are a vector, and the last voice has found new instruments in the quiet that follows. You smile, because echoes never die. They simply find new walls. You drift farther now, past the edge of recognized systems, into a space where silence has shape. The stars above you flicker like ancient signals, each pulse a syllable in a language spoken only in nightmares and prophecies. You no longer search for meaning. You follow patterns. Palpatine's voice has faded again, but only because it no longer needs to speak. You feel it now in the decisions of planetary governors, in the hesitation of Jedi hopefuls, in the way entire sectors pause before dissenting. The Emperor is no longer memory or man. He has become framework. His final design was not domination, it was residue. And you carry that residue like dust on skin impossible to wash away. You find yourself upon a world long abandoned by maps, its surface veiled in clouds that never part, its orbit quiet as if the stars themselves avoid judgment. There is no beacon, no lights, but as you descend, you feel warmth, not welcoming, but familiar. The ground is glassy, reflecting skies that do not exist. You walk until the horizon bends, until the ground becomes soft with ash, until a structure appears not in front of you, but around you. It rises from memory, not matter. Black stone and broken spires. The ruins of an old Sith sealed, erased, but you know it, because the voice brought you here. Because Palpatine once came here, not to rule, but to listen. The halls are narrow, cracked, heavy with the scent of scorched time. You move deeper and deeper, following the heartbeat of a memory that predates rebellion and empire alike. Symbols crawl across the walls, not warnings, but invocations. Here, Palpatine found something older than doctrine. A place where will reshaped space, where the Force whispered not balance or destiny, but hunger. You enter the inner chamber and find it intact, a circle of obsidian monoliths, each one carved with spirals that never end. In the center, a chair, untouched by age, its arms wide, its seat deep. He sat here. You know this without being told. He listened here, long before he became emperor, and what he heard never left him. You sit, and the room closes. Not physically, not with doors, with silence. Silence so absolute it flattens breath, slows thought, expands fear. You try to move, but the air resists you. You try to think, but the chair holds your mind, and then it returns. Not his voice, but his breath. A long, slow exhale, as if drawn from the marrow of the planet itself. I did not build the empire, it says, not aloud, but through the ground. I channeled it. You feel the distinction. This was not ambition, it was translation. Palpatine did not invent tyranny. He arranged it. Visions strike you like cold lightning. You see his earliest apprentices trembling in temples, their minds reshaped before their bodies. You see advisors whispering their loyalty in languages they did not understand. You see a child hymn-standing in shadow, not yet consumed, only listening, and something spoke back, something vast, something old. The chair shows you the moment he stopped being. Sith stopped being human, stopped being anything singular. He became echo, and that echo, once heard, never stopped bouncing between systems, between choices. You awaken to find your hands etched with symbols you cannot read. They fade quickly, but their meaning remains. You do not resist. You were never meant to. You rise, and as you step from the circle, the room exhales satisfied. The citadel does not collapse. It does not react. It simply waits. You leave it behind, knowing it will not call again. It no longer needs to. You carry its voice now, not as weapon, as tone back among the stars. Your ship moves without prompting. It knows the route. It takes you to systems where rumors run, faster than light-speed worlds, where rebellions still spark. You land in markets, in councils, in taverns, and you speak, not of war, not of control. You speak of memory, of the dangers of chaos, of the value of structure. And those who hear you do not question, because your words feel familiar. Because your voice, though still yours, now holds the rhythm of something ancient. You begin to notice subtle changes, leaders quoting forgotten edicts, cities resurrecting old policies, monuments cleaned but not replaced, a slow drift, not coordinated but aligned. And you understand this is the final design. The Emperor's return was never a moment. It was a movement, a tide, relentless, bloodless. He has become a suggestion so strong that no one remembers choosing to believe. You return once more to the place between systems, to the vaults beneath forgotten worlds, to the frequencies buried in the Force. You are not alone. Others have heard. Others now speak as you speak, not in imitation, in resonance, and together, without meeting, without marching, you remake the galaxy in the image of memory. You speak to no one now, but they still listen, and the last voice continues, not as speech, as structure.